Hello,
Hello,
what's your name?
my name is Stephen Potts.
Hello, Stephen Potts. And where did you grow up and where do you live?
I grew up in a rural village in County Durham in northeast England, and I now live in Oslo in Norway.
Oh, great. And what's been the predominant practice of your life, whether yoga or meditation?
Predominantly Ashtanga yoga, with some meditation and other things, but predominantly Ashtanga. Yeah.
And when did you start practice?
I started about 12 or 13 years ago. I had a back injury, I had a prolapsed disc, and I was recommended by a physio that rather than take surgery that I should do some yoga. And I was in the lucky position at the time to have a girlfriend who's now my wife, who practiced yoga and was teaching yoga. So I went along to some classes and then almost immediately started feeling an improvement in the pain that I was having, and that's really where it all began.
Wow. Did yoga sort that prolapsed disc out?
Yeah. So I never had surgery or even any other treatment. I just practiced Ashtanga, and then gradually I had no pain, and I've never experienced a problem since then.
Oh, amazing. And so you got into it purely for the physical?
Yeah,
Right.
I did, yeah.
And then how did you find as you went through the journey of Ashtanga,
Yeah.
did that change or did it stay physical?
Yeah, in my practice or what I get and seek from my practice has changed almost regularly throughout these sort of 12, 13 years. So I noticed that I got a buzz from the practice, this kind of, I guess, adrenaline rush from it. And then I was running a lot, and I found that practicing yoga helped to balance out my body from that. So there was still that physical element. And over time, I found that at the end of the practice, I felt very peaceful, very relaxed, and very happy. And then I sort of found elements of all of that going on, and then coming up to sort of the present day, I found even more things that the practice had given me, things that I've sought, but also things that I was sort of passively taking on board that have actually been really powerful for me now.
Did you, because you now live in Oslo and you grew up in England, have you moved a lot over the last 13 years, and is the practice something that's kind of been a constant through that as you've moved?
Yeah, it has. So I guess I didn't really start practicing until I'd moved to London for university and work. And I practiced inconsistently, I guess, in the start, but I practiced here. And then I moved to Abu Dhabi with the same girlfriend who's now my wife. And there we practiced together more and more and built it up, and then traveled a lot and would practice in different places where I traveled around, and then it's followed me all the way through to Oslo, and yeah.
So sounds to me like practice has been something that, like you said yourself, you felt happy.
Yeah, and I think that I like the change of moving around so much. And I do feel sort of anchored wherever I am, but practice is another element of that anchoring. That it's not a physical feeling of home for me necessarily, but yoga is part of that psychological, emotional feeling of home. It's like, okay, I'm here on my mat, so I'm home in my head. Yeah.
And so how has it helped you in your life?
Yeah, I think, as I say, so from an injury perspective, it helped me. And then from keeping my body in balance, it helped me. And then from keeping my mind in balance, it helped me. So at different stages, it's been a tool to help with different specific problems without me necessarily knowing it. But in the past few months, it's really helped me connect to a sense of being myself and who I am. as well as all of the other things actually. So I feel like in my life now that I get the full range of these benefits of the practice. Yeah.
And what's brought you to that realization right now? If you say there's a fullness that you've got now, what's brought you to that understanding?
Yeah, well I had a really big health scare. In December of last year, I was diagnosed with a tumour in my pancreas, and there's sort of brief period before I knew what it was and what my prognosis would be, and all I really knew is that the statistics for that kind of cancer are usually quite bad. Fortunately, it was a more kinder form of tumour, but it required a really intensive surgery, one of the most intensive surgeries you can have. And actually what I found in that period of uncertainty and I guess fear and worry and stress was that there were parts of the practice, not just Ashtanga, but philosophy and meditation that I was using without even really thinking about it. So I had this choice of do a surgery or not, and you might say, well, if you don't do the surgery, you die, so that's not really much of a choice, but it is a choice. And once I had it in my head that that was a choice, that meant what I did from then onwards was done with sort of confidence and assuredness. It's like practice has taught me that I have a duty and I have actions to take. And as long as I take the action that fulfills my duty, then I'm doing the right thing. And then that kind of feeling got me through the sort of worst parts, because, okay, this is it. I've made my decision, this is fine. And then after my surgery, things were tough, it was very painful. It was a very difficult time physically and mentally, but I kept coming back to this feeling of, I chose this because it was the right thing to do. And that really helped me through it. And that comes from my practice.
So if you were to track, when you realised something was wrong, through to, getting diagnosis, through to, it happened just before Christmas, right? So
yeah.
And you've got a family. How was that whole process through navigating yourself through the kind of the times when it's really uncertain?
Yeah, I think part of it is shock anyway, and that shock I think has an actual value and benefit because it stops you from overthinking the problem. It is not a good feeling necessarily, but it helps in a way. It's a natural reaction.
Is it this sense of like, it's happening to me?
Yeah, or it's almost a surreal sense of I'm watching it happen to me in a way. And I think to go again back to the practice, that is also something that we sort of learn, which is that you are not your thoughts and you are not your body and you're not your mind, but you are an observer of that. And once that sort of clicked inside of me, then I was sort of watching this surreal thing happen, but it was a natural way of doing it. I was in control of that then.
So all the way through, you were able to almost watch it as if it was happening, like as you were an observer of it.
Yeah, I would say so. And of course, like, I would feel this fear and anxiety, and that was mostly connected to my children and what if they don't have a dad, or what if my wife doesn't have a husband, what happens then? And that, it's a terrifying feeling. But at the same time, I had this sort of sense of purpose, and I also had this ability to sort of observe it and go, it's fine to be afraid of that. It's okay, it's acceptable, but you have to keep doing what you're doing.
So how was the surgery? How was the whole actual, you know, the hub of it, the surgery, the whole process of having the tumour removed? How did that go for you?
Yeah, it was very difficult. It was around, I think, 7 hours of surgery. And it's a really intensive surgery, so it's not just a removal of the tumour, but and I don't fully understand it myself, but because of the way the blood flow works, they have to remove part of the pancreas, but also the duodenum, which is a start of your small intestine, and then your gallbladder. And that means it's one of those things where you remove the body's ability to take in nutrition at the same time as you give the body a need to recover, really. So you're really fighting an uphill battle from that point onwards. So there's the initial period, the first week or so, where there was pain and it was difficult, and there was, you know, major medical interventions on a sort of couple-hour basis that just became a bit routine. And then there's this period afterwards, which is trying to heal myself while not really being able to feed myself. So that was hard, but the easy way to think of it is that you see progress every day, and that helps. But the other way to think of it is that this is just the moment that I'm in now. This is tough, but you just have to go through it. And the practices give me lots of tools for that.
And so how did the practice or elements of the practice help you through that time? And then how has you evolved back into what the practice has been for you today?
Yeah, from a really sort of practical level, practice taught me how to breathe through discomfort and breathe through pain, right? So I had that tool, and that was a powerful tool. You know, anything that can reduce this feeling of pain was magic, really. And then there is this sort of sense of I'm not my thoughts, and you know, I remember one incident of sitting inside an MRI scanner in really intense pain because they can't give you epidural and medicine in that moment, and just thinking, okay, this is really painful, this is horrible, but then just sort of managing to go slightly out to myself and just go, okay, you just have to stay in this position in your mind where you're watching this, and it's not nice, but you're not there. And that the practice gave me that ability, that consciousness, mindfulness to do that. And so this is sort of the very practical element, but as I say, there's a philosophy, the way of thinking about things. Then there's body awareness. So my body was destroyed in a way, but I knew what to do to bring it back, and now I'm lucky enough to be able to practice again, physical practice. It's pure joy.
What's that joy?
If I take it back to the first time I practiced after the surgery, it's the easiest way of explaining that joy, because I'd gone through a period where being alive was uncertain, and then the surgery is not without complications, so being able to practice, there was no certainty of that either. So I came to my mat, and then I'm using my body again, which I wasn't sure I'd be able to do. I'm hearing my breath again, I'm hearing the room, I'm smelling the sounds, and I'm there, I'm alive, you know. It's existing, it's life. There's confirmation of that life. But then there's another element of it, which is that you go through life, and when you're sick, you're the sick person, that's the role you have. And then I'm a father, so in some moments I'm the father. I'm the partner to my wife, I'm a colleague at work. But then come to my yoga mat and I start practicing, and just for a moment, for an hour or an hour and a half, however long it is, and I am me. And that's magical. That's an amazing feeling, especially when you're not sure you're going to be you for a while. And then even further in this practice that we have is sometimes in between the thoughts there's a stillness and a calm and a peace, and you're just there. You're not really any of those things, you're not even you, you're just there. And that, if you could bottle that moment, you'd be a billionaire overnight. It's amazing.
So it sounds deeply emotional and moving.
Yeah. And in that first practice, I'm not sure if I've cried in public before in my life. It's not really something that I do, but in that first practice, I cried my eyes out. And it was my first time with a teacher. I'd never met this teacher before, so who knows what she thought of this new guy in the room, but she was lovely, and much like many people in our community, she gave me a hug, and she knew a bit about my story, and really helped me in that moment, and said, you're here, which of course brought more tears, but it was wonderful, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing, Stephen.
Yeah.
What's, if you can put it into words, what's one thing that you've learned through all of this, all of your practice, that you'd like to share with others?
What I've learned is that sometimes this practice is hard, right? Sometimes you don't want to get up in the morning because you're tired. And sometimes maybe stretching or using strength hurts. And sometimes you just don't feel like you're in the mood, or maybe you went out and had a few beers the night before, I don't know, whatever. But when you do it, no matter what the situation and what the circumstances are, it does something for you. And the real power of it is, it does something for you that day in that moment. But as I've learned in my life, it's doing something for you throughout the whole period. And you never know, it can be there for you at the worst moment and really help you.
Thank you, man. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.